Welcome back to another episode of The Banker Next Door. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. I hope everyone is having a great week out there so far. We made it. Last episode here in report week. So we made it to the final report we're covering today. And I've got a really good one. I saved what I felt was the best for last. Cornerstone Advisors recently put out a report called The Journey Toward 2030. And they basically give out 5 pillars that basically every bank should be looking at in order to become a smarter bank. So we're going to take a look at this report and break down what these 5 pillars are. But before we jump into the report, I just wanted to give a shout out to everyone at the Stonier Graduate School of Banking. Obviously, this is Stonier week. They're in full flux there. I am rocking my ABA Stonier Graduate School of Banking shirt here, which I've been pumping all week, shamelessly plugging, as it were. But yes, just shout out to everybody at the school there. Hope everyone there is having a great time and doing well. But let's bring this in here. Like I said, our final report. So I could not put a link to this report because it has to be downloaded. You have to get it from Cornerstone Advisors, but I figured I would show you guys their website here. So this is their website. You can look under research, basically bring this up and just go down, click on download the report. It's free. You just have to fill out some information. You can put it in there. I would highly recommend it. If you do not know who Cornerstone Advisors are, if you have not checked them out, and a fabulous company. Love the work that they do. They work with hundreds of banks all across the country. They do a lot of research, put out a lot of great research reports. I wish I had the time to cover a lot more of their stuff. But they put out some great stuff. And I saw this report and I thought it was really good and really wanted to cover this because it's a very practical report. And you'll see what, when we kind of jump into this in a second. But like I said, if you want it, I did put a link to the website in the description down below. If you want to go to their website, check it out, download the report, feel free to do so. And I do want to put a plug. I'm not, I'm getting I'm not getting paid in any way, shape, or form for this. I'm just plugging Cornerstone because I love those. I've known those guys over there for a long time. I think the world of them, Steve and Ron Shelvin, all the guys over there do a phenomenal job. They have a great team and just a wonderful company. And so like I said, like I said, I'm not getting paid anything to plug them. I'm just plugging them because I think they're great. So, but okay. So let me stop this for a second because I got to switch here to other screen. Oh, no, that's not what I wanted. Let's see here. Hang on. There we go. That's what I wanted. Okay. All right. So let's get rid of that, and then let's make this bigger here. Okay. So this report is called The Journey Toward 2030, Becoming a Smarter Bank. Every bank and credit union is going to become a technology company. That's why the future of America's financial system depends on smarter banks. And as we scroll down here, the smarter bank, why it matters. So banking is changing fast, and banks and credit unions that don't adapt run the risk of being left behind. Traditional models, rigid hierarchies, sluggish processes, and reliance on legacy systems are no match for today's digital-first competitors. Being a smarter bank isn't just about being bigger or investing more in technology. It's about being a bank or credit union that operates with intelligence, agility, efficiency, leveraging data, automation, and strategic execution to drive sustainable growth. It's a bank or credit union that moves fast, makes informed decisions, and delivers seamless customer experiences, all while optimizing costs and managing risk. Cornerstone Advisors has identified 5 key pillars: hyper-efficiency, data-driven, nimble, differentiated, and opportunistic, that are not just best practices, they are the blueprint for building smarter banks. These pillars address the biggest challenges banks and credit unions face today, offering a blueprint for the journey toward 2030. Throughout this paper, we'll explore each pillar backed by data, real-world insights, and proven strategies. So, and again, here they say, kind of defining the smarter bank. And then here's each category. So, hyper efficiency. So groundbreaking efficiency will be the hallmark of the smarter bank, driven by a combination of digital self-service, process automation, and artificial intelligence. Data-driven. Smarter banks will need to take inspiration from trailblazer organizations that know how to drive value by leveraging data to make better, faster, and more informed decisions. Nimble. Forget annual planning cycles. Banks and credit unions that intend to survive in a technology-first era understand they are in a constant release environment and must continually balance structure with getting stuff out the door fast. Differentiated. To compete with non-traditional banks, the smarter bank will need to shrug off plain vanilla sameness and forge distinct competitive positions and segmented brands. And finally, opportunistic. Whether it's M&A, talent carve-outs, new market entries, or new lines of business, smarter banks will be the ones that know when to move and look for opportunities, particularly when the industry is inward-focused and risk-averse. So, and then I'm actually going to make this a little bit smaller here. I hope everyone can still see that okay. So then it gets into efficiency. So efficiency isn't about doing things cheaper. It's about doing them smarter. And then, it's do more with less. All right, I knew this was going to be a challenge here, just keeping this right-sized. So just a couple things here. We'll kind of, like I said, we're going to go through each category rather quickly. And this is what I meant by this being a very practical report. These pages are, they're not overly busy. They're very kind of short, succinct, to the point, which I like it a lot. So basically, the efficiency here is do more with less world. So rising costs, regulatory pressures, and increased competition mean organizations simply can't afford operational inefficiencies. 51% of bank and 49% of credit union executives list efficiency and cost management as a top concern. Costs of funds remain a challenge, making streamlining operations a necessity. Competitive pressure will keep loan rates in check, hampering the ability to improve net interest margins. So what's the impact? So you have customer, employee, and organizational. So the customer, long wait times, slower processing times, increased errors, and disruption in service. Employee, lower productivity, frustration, job dissatisfaction, inability to focus on serving customers or members. And then organizational, inability to compete at optimal levels, reputational damage, and inability to invest and higher operational costs. Efficiency is a must-have and not a nice-to-have. And then efficiency is no longer just about cost cutting. It's about ensuring the ability to invest in the business. Consider these industry trends. Non-interest expense pressure. So banks need to bring their efficiency ratios within the low 50% range to stay competitive, but many still hover above 60%. Yes, that's true. Revenue per employee is a key differentiator. High-performing banks are already generating $287,000 plus per employee, a number expected to exceed $400,000 by 2030 due to automation and AI. Digital self-service is underutilized. Too many routine transactions, loan payments, check deposits, account maintenance are still handled by humans instead of via automated channels. Tech utilization isn't optional. Banks investing in cloud-based systems, AI-powered automation, workflow tools, and API middleware are gaining an edge over traditional institutions still bogged down by legacy infrastructure. Simply put, banks that fail to optimize efficiency will fall behind both in terms of profitability and customer experience. How to achieve hyper-efficiency? So automate the routine. Turn data into decisions, redesign workflows for speed and scale, scaling with smarter systems, and then questions to consider, are you efficient enough? What's stopping us from becoming hyper efficient? Where are the biggest inefficiencies in our operations? And then what steps can we take today to start optimizing? The next thing, data-driven. So the future belongs to banks and credit unions that know how to turn data into action. So drowning in data, but starving for insights. So banks and credit unions sit on a gold mine of data, transaction histories, customer behaviors, risk assessment, and more. But too often this data is fragmented, underutilized, or locked away in legacy systems. Why do you think open banking became such a hot topic? Why do you think that all these big companies out there, Google, Amazon, why do you think they want banks' data? Because of just what was said right here. Banks have a gold mine of data. And I suggest banks do not give it. This is why I've been so anti-open banking, Because why do we want to just give that away? And why do we want to give it away for free? It just doesn't, a whole open banking concept just makes no sense to me. Because we can do this. So what's the impact? Personalize customer experiences, predict risks and opportunities, optimize operations in real time, make informed strategic decisions. Why banks must become data-driven. So more than 50% of banks say siloed data prevents them from making real-time decisions. Only 6% of bank executives and 11% of credit union executives state that they have a very effective data strategy. Despite AI advancements, many institutions still rely on gut instinct over analytics. How to turn data into competitive advantage. So break down data silos, make data actionable, empower employees with data. And then it just gives an example of a data-driven bank. Are you using data to its full potential? So some questions to consider. Are we truly leveraging data to drive decisions, or are we just reporting numbers? Do we have a real-time view of customer behaviors and operational performance? How can we use AI and automation to turn data into a competitive edge? And do we have a clear point of view on offer personalization? Nimbleness separates the banks and credit unions that will thrive from those that will struggle to keep up. So the need for speed, what's the impact? Delayed innovation, missed opportunities, customer frustration. Why being fast and nimble is critical to survive. If organizations want to thrive in an era of rapid change, they need to operate less like bureaucratic institutions and more like adaptive tech firms. How to become more nimble. Build a release mentality, create dedicated innovation teams, empower employees to drive change, leverage tech to drive speed to market. Are you agile enough? Are we treating digital transformation as a one-time project or an ongoing process? How fast can we launch new products or partnerships? Do we have a clear release roadmap for continuous improvements? Banks that fail to differentiate will be forgotten. So, first bank of vanilla, standing out in a crowded market. What does this impact? So pricing pressure, brand invisibility, fintech disruption. Banks recognize the challenge, yet few take decisive action. Differentiation matters more than ever. If banks want to stay relevant, they must move beyond generic offerings and create unique value propositions that truly set them apart. So how can banks differentiate themselves? Well, they can leverage community and brand identity. They can offer personalized and data-driven services. They can embed banking into customers' lives. And then there's another good example there. What makes your bank different? So why should customers choose us over a fintech, big bank, or digital-first competitor? What product, service, or customer segment can grow 2 times? What unique value do we provide that others don't? How can we evolve our brand, products, and services to truly stand out? And then finally, the best performing banks aren't just reacting to change, they're creating opportunities and positioning themselves ahead of the curve. So banks play it too safe. What's the impact? Banks and credit unions that wait for the perfect moment to invest in new technology fall behind faster moving competitors. Financial institutions that stick to traditional business models miss out on new revenue streams. Leadership teams that hesitate to partner with fintechs or explore embedded finance may risk irrelevance in a changing market. Organic only growth strategies might make it difficult to achieve needed economies of scale. Opportunistic thinking drives growth. Financial institutions that want to thrive in the next decade must seize opportunities others overlook. Then they give a bunch of examples there. How banks can develop an opportunistic mindset, invest in the right technologies, build strong partnerships, establish a proactive approach to mergers and acquisitions, and then mix up the talent pool. And then it goes into, mastering M&A, a real world example. And then some final questions here. Are you seizing the day? If your bank or credit union is focused only on maintaining the status quo, ask yourself, is acquisition, bank, credit union, branch, line of business, specialized lending team, etc., part of our growth strategy? Is our operating model, organizational structure, or technology scalable for acquisitions? Do we have a merger execution plan, including vendor contract negotiations to hit our cost savings targets? And then it has end notes and everything else, and that is basically the report. But I think this is a great report from a couple of perspectives. Number one, it asks some phenomenal questions. Are you thinking about some of this stuff? And I do think that there is a real issue out there with banks. Like, in other words, when in terms of strategy, you get into this whole thing called first mover advantage, right? I don't think banks need to be the first mover. The second thing would be what's called a fast follower. Again, I think you try to be a fast follower as best you can, but the reality is money. A lot of this stuff is great, but it also costs a lot of money to do a lot of these things, and you have to, and again, with resources being what they are, trying to be as efficient as possible, you have to be very careful about how you spend this money, because I would remind people that a lot of the technology projects that banks put their money into, they don't go so well. A lot of them, 70% of them actually end up being total failures at the end of the day. That's a high probability that all that money that you're investing is not going to pay off. That's why a lot of banks are very hesitant to do stuff. However, there is a big but here. If you wait too long, again, like the report said, if you wait for that perfect moment, you can get to a point, I believe, where you get so far behind on the technology curve that it literally becomes impossible for you to catch up. It costs too much money for you to catch up to even be a fast follower. And then when you get to that point, it's probably might be time to sell the bank at that point, because that might be your only real viable option. Otherwise, you risk just becoming irrelevant and basically just really falling behind all your competitors. So it is a very difficult thing to balance. But again, really like this report. Very provocative, thought-provoking. I think it gives you a lot to think about, a lot to consider. So again, if you're interested, go to the website. Go to Cornerstone Advisors website, download the report, go check it out. Again, I'm sure I will be reporting on more research that Cornerstone does in the future. They do a phenomenal job over there. Again, a great job with this report as well. But with that being said, I'm going to wrap up today's episode by saying, please, if you like the episode, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as that really helps the channel. Remember, we are on YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. Please be sure to leave your comments down below, as I always love getting back to everybody. And as always, make sure to check out some of the other content on the channel. This does wrap up report week. I put out 7 other episodes before this covering a litany of bank reports. So if you didn't get a chance to check any of those out, please do so. We're starting tomorrow. We're going to be rolling right back in. I'm going to be back to a whole bunch of different topics this week coming up. And then the following week, it's actually going to be book week, because I got 5 book reports that I basically wanted to bring in. So in 2 weeks, keep an eye out for book week. But and then, as always, if you haven't checked out the BND Strategy Room, make sure to check that out, as that is the main show of the channel. But with that, I bid everyone a fond farewell. Thank you so much for listening. Be safe out there, and I'll see everybody again real soon. Thanks a lot.